Do you know that there's something bigger around us? Something greater than just this tangible reality that we live in? If perhaps you've wondered, or maybe you have felt the greatness that surrounds us and tapped into that other side, then this is an interview that you're going to want to catch with Amanda Edwards, a modern medium and mystic. And she's going to help us grasp what it means to tap into this world of spirit and what it can do for our own lives. How do you know when you're really tapped in? What are you going to experience in your life? What was it like growing up with this natural proclivity or this natural ability to tune into spirit? And what is it like to work with a mystic or a medium? And how can that help you in your own personal life? All these questions answered and more in just a few minutes. Stay tuned for this interview with Amanda Edwards.
The message is always based in, you've got this, and we're here to support it. And there is better for you, and there is better in your relationships. And yes, you are capable of experiencing life more joyfully and immensely. So,
welcome to Profound Shifts. I am your host, Nate Prince. In pursuit of growth for the mind, body, and soul, we talk to humanity's pioneers, game changers, healers, and disruptors to help you make the profound shifts in your life that lead to peace, joy, freedom, and abundance. Are you ready for a life of growth? Define your role today, at least I saw on your website, as a mystic. Is that at all tied to shamanism? Do you see a correlation between that? Or I guess really my question is, for me and for the audience, what does it mean to be a mystic?
That's a great question, because I was just having this conversation with my mom last night, and I was telling her that I really struggled to apply that word to myself when I first was kind of coming out and publicizing what I do and doing readings and offering that work one-on-one and in groups with people. I landed after a lot of conversation with different mentors, and really a lot of my foundation is religious. I come from a pretty traditional Christian background, while a very open-minded and progressive one, not strictly dogmatic or sort of controlling version of Christianity. And so, as I said to my mom when I first was working on using that word, it felt a little nervy to me to apply it to myself. But as I've really studied and read a lot of back from, the concept of ancient mysticism, whether in the Jewish tradition or the Christian tradition or the Muslim faith, that the mystic label has a lot to do with our personal connection with the divine, while someone like a priest or a rabbi has sort of this official role, a structural role that is, it's setting apart kind of the sanctioned studier of faith with the very egalitarian, free concept that all of us have access mystically to the divine. And so my personal experience and personal relationship with connecting divinely as a medium opened up so much knowledge and awareness for me that I kind of had to use that word. And for me, the other thing that it really conveys is the continual studying, that I don't sort of earn a degree as a mystic and be able to say, I have this stamp now, and it allows me to do X, Y, Z, and have this kind of job, and put that on my resume. To me, the concept of mysticism is a framework that encourages from within perpetual study and seeking. And so by putting that word on what I do, it was sort of my own nod to myself that this will now be my path, that everything I learn about life, about my own life, relationships, my work, connections with others, and everything I try to offer those that I work with will be from the position of a seeker. And to me, that's a really important characteristic of that word.
That's interesting.
And so the other element that is really crucial is that it is tapping into finding my own, through this apparatus that I am in this physical world, my own connection to the divine, rather than having to ask someone else or have it translated by someone else. Being able to really connect directly myself and to feel the divine within myself. I think that's the other quality that matters a lot there.
Yeah, to not have it relayed through an authority figure, but to be able to connect personally through your own experience. And something that you said there that I thought was interesting is the word seeker. So it's and I guess to summarize what you were saying is, you said it's not like you achieved this title and it's like, now I'm done. It's a continual search, a continual connection. So even though you've found this divine connection, you are continually learning, continually growing, continually expanding. In this work, as you apply this to working with people, how is it that you what kind of role do you see as you apply this term mystic and this work that you do with people?
Well, I really offer myself up as a channel for them, for those who are kind of almost there. They're close enough that they're interested. They are looking for some sort of evidence or affirmation that there is more to life than what we can physically see. Yeah. And so when someone comes to me for a reading, I am providing that sort of a nest where they can sit with me and receive through and with me. The other person's participation energetically matters. Their physical presence doesn't matter. I just did a reading the other day by email with a client who's in New York and I'm on the West Coast. And I was trying to explain to someone how that works, that, I just tell them, I say, I'm going to be tuning in with and for you during this time frame. And I tell them exactly, Pacific Daylight Time, I will be tuning in just so that you know and that you can kind of participate energetically, but you don't need to. I like to sort of share that respectfully for their energetic space to let them know that I'll be doing that. They don't have to be in the room with me. They don't have to be speaking to me for me to connect that way. So that's the other thing that I offer in my absolute knowledge that is possible. Mm-hmm. It allows me to provide information and details to someone wherever they might be in the world at any time. And just the fact that that's possible opens their eyes to something new about life that we all kind of want to be true. We all want to believe that concept that time and space doesn't matter. When you're missing a loved one, you really want to believe that the time and space between you doesn't matter, that your connection is real. And in that process of doing email readings or doing Skype readings for people, it's a little reminder that yes, indeed, we have some way to connect, that these boundaries that we're used to thinking of in our life don't block what really matters.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you talk about that, the direct connection between time and space. And I am definitely, I'm a student of quantum theory, so I definitely don't understand it the way that I would like to at this point. But they've proved, though, that like one unit of energy doesn't matter the space or the distance between them. You influence one, and the other one is affected, and there's no change in time. Doesn't matter how far apart they are, and so that applies to consciousness and matter and where we are today. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, you bring, as you say, you're not an expert student in quantum physics. I think that brings up something that's always fascinating to me, is for the great diversity that we are as human beings, we don't all need to understand these concepts through one method. For some people, studies of particles, like you're referring to, that will give you a little bit of a glimpse into, oh, there's more at work than we think. For another person, sitting in a church pew might give them a little glimpse into it. That's fine. We don't all have to agree on the explanation. For me, it's more important that we find our own way of accessing that sense, because then what opens up is so much more sense of your own power in your life. And what we're all trying to get at is a more full and dynamic and participatory life where we feel we have a lot of capability and choice and freedom. And so we spend a lot of time arguing over how to explain all of this. And I get a little bit antsy and want to get to the next part. I think it's great that there's so much conversation and talk about mindfulness and spirituality that's sort of out of the realms of traditional teachings. And that's a great step forward, so that the more people feel they do have that personal access or personal understanding of what more might be going on here, the more people will make use of that in making life better.
Yes.
So that's kind of where I hope we're all going together, whether we understand it from a scientific perspective, which, great progress is being made there, or a spiritual one, or even intellectual. I think that there's room for so many different approaches.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree with you, because we've been talking about, for a long time, about the possibility and starting to explore consciousness. I just got off a call with a Chinese medical doctor, and she was talking about how as time is changing, or as we're moving forward in time, she's seeing more and more people come in who are feeling like this anxiousness and this feeling. And she says, back when she was studying, the thought about consciousness and how that played into the mind-body connection didn't really exist. Whereas today, now it's becoming a much more accepted mainstream topic. And so I think we're naturally moving into a place of living it rather than just thinking about it logically. And during our last conversation, you were talking about how in this moment in time, how we were it was so important for us to bring in whole beingness, or wholeness were your words. Can you talk a little bit about that? What's important about it, and this current time. Why is it important?
Yes. I think one of the things that has been important in my path to being able to do this work is to understand the relationship between my physical body and my spiritual, emotional, sort of mental self. So that's one platform on which I talk about our whole beingness, that, feeling physically sort of a clean channel, the way we talk about our eating habits and our exercise, and that having a direct, obvious connection for me in my readiness to receive as a channel. I found myself suddenly becoming a runner at age, 32, when I hadn't my whole life thought that I really could run, or it wasn't really my thing. And I just felt this drive, and I felt compelled to move my body and move the energy through my body. And with that came sudden aversion to different foods, and I found myself eating more cleanly and having just this natural kind of tendency to be drawn more to things straight from the earth. You hear a lot of people talking about high content of plant-based diets, and to me that kind of happened naturally with my spiritual growth. So that was a really interesting thing for me to see, that how that's becoming such a hot topic right now, at the same time as a lot of these spiritual topics are hot topics. So to me, it's a very personal, obvious connection, because that's how I experienced it myself. And then the other part of our whole beingness, I think, that is happening. This is a whole different way of approaching the topic. I've been finding myself really drawn to and lit up by conversations in which we talk about the divine feminine within us and the divine masculine within us, and the concepts of yin and yang and light and dark and complementary elements within our own being really are lighting up on the world stage right now. When you talk about what's happening politically, the way women's voices are being heard from a much different tone than women's equality was happening 30, 40 years ago. The balancing out of gender qualities, not just gender. Now, there's so many complex issues to get sort of past as far as our language, and whether we're talking about gender, sexuality, physical attributes. I'm just talking about our inner qualities that are defined more as feminine or masculine, which can happen in any person in different balances, whether you're anatomically male or female. But I'm seeing a balancing out of those aspects of ourselves within. I see it within me in my own life. I see it in relationships of people I work with, my own, and then it grows out and out in the environments that I work in professionally as a writer. Do you still have me?
Yeah, you're coming in great.
Oops. Okay.
Yeah, good.
There we go. Good. And then, as we watch this surge from the Me Too movement to the last midterm elections, there's a different kind of conversation between men and women and or masculine and feminine about how we work together. And that gets into all of us acknowledging both qualities divinely within our own being, and not denying or pushing away one or the other as it sort of crops up and has different strengths. So I have seen vastly more women in the sort of mystical work that I've done, mediums, energy workers, light workers. I see so many women for 5 years of suddenly running across more and more men who are finding that side of themselves, the more emotionally in tune. I find it so exciting and encouraging to see men flooding into that realm, just like I find it encouraging to see women flooding into realms that have been traditionally dominated by men. So those little signs, I always see them with, I sort of give a little nod, like, yes, indeed, it is happening. We're kind of melding the aspects of ourselves in a way that I truly believe will create greater productivity, more possibility for new things to happen that we've never seen happen before, just because of that balancing out.
That is a fascinating insight. I hadn't looked at it from that perspective. But so what I thought was interesting was when you said how you see more men moving into a traditionally female dominated area, and more women moving into a more traditionally male dominated. Now, how about, so that's on the global scale. What about on a personal level? If a person is, let's say, is it if a person is more, let's say, feminine dominant or masculine dominant, does that create an imbalance in a person's life, or are just some people just naturally that way? I mean, like, is there something that we can do to bring ourselves into balance or wholeness?
I hope I heard your question right, because it was breaking up a little bit. I think what's an important distinction is the difference between balance and equality. we don't need to be equal parts masculine and feminine, but to find a healthy balance between those aspects of ourselves.
Mm.
Does that answer what you're getting at?
Yeah, yep.
To get better at the dance, to get good at when one quality needs to step in and kind of take over or recede a little bit and let the other quality take charge. Getting to know that within yourself is the most powerful way to then be good at it institutionally. I think we all have to start with our own selves. So if I just take a personal example of in a relationship, knowing when to sort of be actively pursuing conversation about a topic that you feel is really important, and it's sort of the taking action versus the receiving. Mm-hmm. Putting something forth versus being open to listening. There are all kinds of ways you can look at the differences between the energy, but getting to know how those energies work within your own self sure makes you better at doing it in groups, letting different qualities take charge at different times. And I love to look at it as a dance, because that's something that, we can all relate to, the give and take in even if we've only ever watched people dance, that you can tell that there's give and take there in partnership.
Yeah.
So
let's I want to shift back towards this work that you are doing with people, and this gift and skill that you are cultivating and accepting. One of the things that I found absolutely fascinating in our initial discussion, and like you were saying, I wish we would have recorded it, is the amount of courage that it took for you to step into this place of being able to receive this guidance and this wisdom. And if you could, for the audience, can you talk a little bit about what it was like as a child and growing up to where you are now in recognizing, this ability, this gift that you have, and now thoroughly stepping into this person that you've become today?
Yes, I'll try to do that concisely. As a child, I think that some of the qualities I had as a kid, all children have. We tend more to have what adults call a great imagination, where we are closer to our mystical selves as children. I think we all come in that way. Some of us probably just have it a little more strongly than others. And I was one of those kids who went around constantly knowing that there was more. I just had a real comfort with knowing that there were beings and energy around me and in everything I talk about. When I was a kid, I knew a personality in everything that I picked up. I would collect rocks. I would arrange little families of snails on the porch, and I knew their personalities just by being with them. I can talk about that now as a medium and realize that I was employing my psychic gift in doing that, because truly there is energy and unique characteristics in everything, in trees. My kids make fun of me because I genuinely do hug trees because I really find the energy coming out through all forms of life to be some form of divine energy. So as a kid, I also heard voices. I felt at the foot of my bed at night, things like that are a little more extreme end of really connecting with spirit as a child. But I was in a family that frankly just didn't buy into that. It wasn't part of our family tradition or heritage or conversation that an individual might talk to spirit. There was no concept of going to see a psychic, consulting mediums. we were pretty traditional. We went to church, we listened to the pastor, and that was it. That was our connection with the divine. So I think when I'm asked my parents, what's happening when those people talk to me that I can hear, they probably just ignored it because they thought, well, kids use their imagination. If I had grown up in a culture that lived very close to the earth, in the jungle, let's say, where shamanism is a tradition, and I had asked an elder about what are those voices I hear, they would have put me right into the education of a shaman from there. But I happened to grow up in, Southern California near the city, and it just wasn't part of the environment that I was in. So for many years, I kind of tried to fit in and just do what kids around me were doing and follow, the successes of my big sister and kind of fit into a specific lane that didn't quite feel like me for a long time. And then, like happens, I think, with so many people who have gifts like these, it kind of took some life circumstances just crumbling in order to break open spiritually again, in a way that I started to have all kinds of just flooding of energy. Following, I was getting divorced. I had struggled with an autoimmune illness that I'd been diagnosed with in college, all kinds of different things that kind of broke me open. And to me now, again, it makes sense, the order that all of these things happened, because following that, it's sort of being forced open, I had so many positive experiences with spirit again, like I had as a kid. And then just through the course of various synchronicities and being drawn to different teachers and picking up things from TV and reading, I discovered that I genuinely am a medium, and basically went into training like I would have done if I'd grown up in a culture, as a child, where you learn to hone that ability. Because like anything else, that description of learning how to tune a radio dial is very apt for mediumship. You can't just welcome in all the voices that you hear or take all the messages and have it be useful and make any sense. So I made the choice to learn to really develop it in a way that it could be useful to me and to other people. I felt very called to do that. So, still along the way, I'm just kind of a regular girl from a suburban upbringing, surrounded by people who have been following professions like the law or business or medicine, and finding myself on this path of mysticism, surrounded by all of my kind of regular people, friends. And it's been a really fascinating process to learn how to talk with people about what I do. The culture that I have grown up in really segments our spirituality and our professional kind of regular life. For me, I'm constantly looking for ways to integrate this ability to make the experiences around me in regular life more positive. So it's really a constant journey, and that gets back to what I think the life of a mystic means, is to continually search and ask. And yes, I use meditation and different tools like that help me in my own life as well.
And I
was just going to say that the first few times that I told somebody, sit down with me and I'll give you a reading, it was as bizarre as, you might imagine for someone like me to say, yes, I can do this. And I was just referring to a conversation I had with my mom last night. She's little by little kind of opened up and learned and asked me questions about what I do. And it's been, 7 years that I've been doing this work professionally with clients. And she said, how did you know it wasn't your imagination? And I said, Mom, I just had to try it out. At some point you have to be willing to kind of jump off the cliff and after having some practice in mediumship circles and developing it with others who were willing to practice with me, say, okay, I'm going to take in a stranger and sit down with them and tell them what I see and hear and feel. And it didn't take long before the just awestruck responses encouraged me to keep going. It's very hard to describe how powerful it is for me every time I do a reading for someone who's, they're a stranger to me, and suddenly I'm sharing all of these sort of secrets of their heart with them that they've really so longed to know that someone could help affirm or help them figure out answers to. I always reassure people that I don't go around doing that in public. I don't tune into the secrets of your heart if you're next to me on the train or whatever. That's just not how I operate. And that's not really how it's supposed to work, I guess, is my best answer for that. I think it is divinely guided to provide what people need and want when they are seeking it. So, I've had to tell people on dates, don't worry, I'm not reading you right now. So this is the fun and kind of weird part of life in a lot of ways, because I grew up this regular girl, kind of, playing basketball, hanging out with my friends. It was something that's taken a while for me to share with people who knew me sort of during that big quiet period of my life.
Yeah. So as you've stepped into this, so to speak, have you found that, and I want to go, after we talk about this, I do want to go forward and I want to talk about what is it that somebody could expect, from working with you and having a session with you and having those things revealed, like what does that do for them? But before we go there, I just want to touch on this briefly. And that's that as you've stepped into this role, have you felt changes inside of like the flavor of your life? Like the perspective of the experiences that you have, your daily experiences, have you found a change in how you experience that?
Yes, so much. I can relate, while this wasn't part of my tradition growing up, the concept of being born again, I really felt what that was all about when I opened up to just embracing my mediumship. I think that once you do open up and find the vibration of the divine and find the vibration of sort of the greater cosmic consciousness, you see things and hear things and connect with things every day so differently. An example, and this happened last night. Also, this was so cool, talking with my mom about this work. I told her, I've really been having cool bird encounters lately. And we talk about birds being such great channels for spirit too, and they can show up in some pretty dramatic ways. And while we were having our time together, I heard something very quiet that later my mom told me she thought was just a person talking on the street. But when I heard it, I sort of grabbed her arm and I said, look up. And just as I said that, a white owl was flying over our heads. We're just in Southern California, near the city, and a white owl flew right over us.
Wow.
And so, the other day this happened, and I was driving my car in Pasadena, just outside of LA, and suddenly felt this, it's sort of like a tap on the shoulder, I guess you could call it, looking up outside of my car window, and a great blue heron was flying right over my car. And, in the city, we're not used to seeing that kind of thing very often, but I am so drawn to the symbolism of different animals. I have, books of symbols. I'm always consulting sort of the archetypes and the ancient wisdom about different appearances in dreams and things like that. So it's basically just expanded my sources of information in a huge way. Those things always tell me something about the experience that I'm having that's bigger than I used to experience them. So that's one way, is just in my everyday, you know, whether it's in songs that I hear in a store, or like a lot of people are talking about now, the numbers you see on clocks, all of those signs that are very meaningful. I was just missing out on them for many years before I tuned into how energy works and how spirit talks to us.
Yeah.
I have I guess I'll say, advantage of having it confirmed, because I am a channel for spirit and I get to do this with clients who are strangers. So I get to have it confirmed that, yes, there is information that's very accurate, that there's no way you could know unless you opened up in that way. So of course that would change my perspective of life every single day.
Yeah, that, you know, I guess I can relate to it in a small sense, in that when I had my mystical experience in 2010, I started opening up to recognizing synchronicities and, you know, I guess the messages that come from the world around us. So I guess what I'd like to talk about now for the audience is, who is it that is looking to work? I mean, who would be an ideal person that would want to come work with you? And yeah, I mean, what is it that a person would be looking for or experiencing in their life that would make them want to come work with you?
It's funny to put it that way, because really I've worked with such a variety of people in all stages of life. It's been interesting to hear how much younger people, sort of early 20s and teenagers, are really interested and drawn to kind of learning what's going on beyond them. I think our young people are really navigating so much right now in the kind of experience they're having of anxiety and pressures from outside, that I think that's one place I really like to connect with young people, to affirm again that there's more going on that they can tune into internally, and not have to always listen to external messages about their worth and their past.
Yeah.
The other kind of person I find so often, I end up working with someone who is really eager to move from one state of being into another in their life. They're trying to break through in some way, break through toward a goal that they've always had, break through. I try to say not break out of, but break through toward, because if we focus too much on what we're trying to get out of, it's pretty hard to get out of it. But that's what I'm here for as a channel, is to sort of help clear the vision for people who are, they just have a sense deep down that there is more, but it's so quiet within them that they haven't kind of known what to do with it. And usually it just takes one session with me to realize, oh yeah, somebody can validate the things that I have suspected, or that I've dreamed about or wished for. And I just sort of help people focus that and turn it into something more real and tangible for their experience. So there's that level. And I essentially have started calling those soul readings. You know, it's like my soul connects with yours, and we open up the things that, you know, are most true to your soul's path here in this life. And then I also really just do kind of traditional mediumship, which is connecting with spirit who's passed out of physical life, but has so much interest and care about those of us who are still living our physical lives. A lot of the time the work ends up being some of both, that I tune in to a specific spirit person or passed away loved one or friend who has a very specific message of guidance, who's got a really great view of what's going on with the client. So that spirit person helps me convey to the client something special about them that can now be seen from the vantage point of, freedom from time and space that person has. I think that's a very powerful experience for my clients to have a loved one. It could be a grandparent that they spent a lot of time with when they were 5, 6 years old and have lived most of their lives without that grandparent.
Yeah.
But then suddenly at age 35, 40, they're here conveying all of this really close knowledge and awareness of who this person is and what their path has been like. And it just gives a sense of there's something bigger supporting me, something bigger propelling me forward. I think that's what those readings are really good for in people's lives, is to sort of have a boost forward from somebody. So a lot of the time it's people who feel disconnected from the people around them in some way. And having the connection to spirit is like all they need to keep going forward for a little bit. And then they see life changing in different ways.
That's so powerful. I mean, for somebody who's been stuck in one mode to be able to have that connection through you, I think that I would imagine, everybody who's watching this, like myself, is, like, I wish I could tap into that. I wish I could bring that into my own life and get that wisdom. Do you have any insights for people who want to tap into that world for themselves? Oh, I lost you.
To tap in for themselves.
Yes. Yep. You're back.
Is that what you said? Thank you. Okay. Absolutely. In fact, I also think, especially if I've worked with somebody multiple times, I always try to work toward that goal, is to let people know the ways that it's happening for them already that they might not realize.
Yeah.
Like the anti-therapy. I'm not trying to keep you as a client for session after session. I want to sort of help you and launch you to be able to, which is not great for business maybe, but I tell people to give it some time if they want to come back on a regular basis. I say, give it 3 months or something and see how these things start to take shape in your life before we do another reading, so that you can kind of catch up on the outside to what has shifted on the inside. So that's one way I work with people over time. And then there are sort of these 3 elements of 3 conditions that I have found are really necessary for me to do the work effectively, that I really believe everyone has access to in a different way. One of those is to develop their connection with a sense of reverence for life. Whether or not you have any personal feeling of something being holy, you might have a sense of something being sacred. That can come, for me, it started at a young age because I sat in, experience after experience of listening to choral music or playing the piano myself, going camping, being on an athletic team, that sort of the unity of the team and the collective energy driving the group forward. There's a whole range of experiences we have in our lives where we can find our sense of something being sacred. And you can feel it in your body when you feel this elevated, knowing that you're connected to something greater than just yourself. If someone has had very little experience of that, one of the things I talk about is having been drawn in my life to working with people in prisons and juvenile halls. And for a long time, I didn't quite understand why I felt so compelled and drawn to that particular situation. And I think one of the reasons that it feels like home to me is that in a circumstance where it's like you're kind of sitting in the ashes of your life, but you've kind of gotten to the lowest of lows when you're in a situation like that, I find that the divine and the sacred can crop up and show up in such surprising places like that.
Wow.
That it's not so much a sense of I feel compelled to go and help. Of course, a lot of people who, find themselves working with prisoners or working with people who are really down and out may feel some sense of responsibility and wanting to do good. But I've realized for me, it's almost like I'm drawn because I'm looking for God there. I see God at work in such stark and startling, beautiful ways through human beings who are in what we consider a really lowly state. So that's one thing, is to just develop your relationship with that concept, that feelings of hope, feelings of joy in the midst of strife. Those things are sacred. Watching new life burst forth from what looks like a really hopeless situation, that is the sacred at work. Anything where many people are coming together in a unified way toward a goal. That's why I think choral music is so compelling to me, or a symphony playing instruments together. I've always been struck by watching a symphony orchestra and thinking about the years and the time and dedication that each instrumentalist has had to put into what I'm now getting to witness. And to me, that is one of the most powerful expressions of the divine in this life. So that was a long answer for that particular aspect, but it's something we don't talk about in day-to-day life a lot, is tuning into the sacred and where do you find it. I think that's a little bit what I was getting at earlier when I talked about what I hope will happen on the planet, is more and more of us tuning into the best of ourselves so that collectively we can do some more amazing things together. And I like the representation that an orchestra or a really, really good athletic team has, makes a case for that. Because it's each person having devoted themselves to being the very best at their job, and then being able to contribute to something greater than themselves from that place of having made themselves the best they can be. So spiritually, we can do that as well. When I sit down to do a reading for someone, I also have to be willing to jump without knowing what net will catch me. I have to be willing to say the things that are coming to me that can be very, very specific. In readings, the more specific the information, the better. Of course, you will resonate more the more detail I'm willing to give you. That these messages that I get from spirit. At first, it felt pretty crazy to me to say, well, I see a turtle and it's doing this, and we're in San Francisco here, and I'm getting all of this imagery or very specific phrases. But when a client can receive that and say, oh, that's exactly the phrase my grandmother would have used, or that's exactly the pet name she gave me when I was little, or I have to be willing to take that leap, to be that specific, to have that kind of success. So to me, that's very much a lesson that goes against the idea that we're taught to look before you leap always. I'm not saying wipe away all logic and throw caution to the wind in every situation. But for me, spiritually, it's very important that you develop a relationship with faith that allows you to make some moves without being positive what the outcome will be. I think that's very important. You can take it out of the realm of spirituality and put it into scientific discovery, or a business.
Okay, so where we were at is you were talking about being being willing to jump without knowing where, basically, like what the outcome was going to be. And then you were just starting to talk about like where else you could apply that in your life. And I heard you mention business, and then that's when I lost you.
Okay. Yeah, I think when you look at anyone who is an innovator in business, in scientific discovery, artists, someone who's trying to create something new that doesn't already exist has to be comfortable with that. So for us individually on a spiritual level or in our personal lives to make a breakthrough to a new state of being, there is some of that leap to be made as well. For me, it was a significant leap to call myself a medium in the circles that I was growing up in, to refer to myself as a mystic and sort of officially put that out there to the world. That was actually an enormous leap. Now it feels like a part of my everyday life. We never are perfect at that. Yeah. But anytime we want to create something new, we better be willing to do it. So I think that you can see that when you look at other kinds of successes, like an artist or someone who discovers something new in a laboratory. The same thing is at work when you want your own life to look different.
Totally. Okay, and so for somebody who wanted to be able to tap into this, are there any other things that they can do? I mean, so we have basically being able to allow themselves to have a sense of reverence, and to I guess step into, have the courage and the faith in the willingness to jump without knowing what's on the other side. Is there any other things that we can incorporate into our daily lives that allow us to tap into that?
Yeah, I think one of the things you hear the most out there these days, no matter who you listen to, is meditation. And that I stand by that it has been an important part of my development to learn what meditation is for me. Like everything else, I think that because we are such diverse, complex beings as people, there is no one way that's the answer. So, whether you start out by listening to guided meditations on an app, or you maybe you're someone who discovers that you're a runner. Like I, found myself really wanting to run all the time years back. And I found that process was really good for meditation. Whether you like watering plants and find that messages come in while you're watering plants, it doesn't have to be one thing, the concept of meditation. But what it does is sort of takes you outside of your physical environment. It lets you zoom out. I always talk about take the zoom out view of yourself as a being and know that you are bigger than this body and this place right now. I think that guided meditations can be a really great, accessible way. There's so much available to people on YouTube these days that you can just open your phone and have someone guide you through that process. So when I do workshops for groups, it almost always involves some sort of a meditation experience, but it doesn't have to take very much time. I think people think of that as like joining a gym and you have to go for an hour every day for it to make a difference in your life. And I'm at the point now where, to me, meditation can be like 30 seconds to get into the state that I need to be in to be ready to do a reading for someone, or to get into the state that I can tell physically and spiritually I'm ready to receive. How to tune your radio to a certain receptive mode, that sometimes it does take that practice of meditation to get comfortable with it. But I always tell people it does not have to look like sitting cross-legged and closing your eyes. That's one way. But I try to help people learn the very many ways that you can tune into. It's basically opening yourself up to receive. So what that feels like is what you need to learn, and it can happen a lot of different ways.
Is there well, I guess like you just kind of summed it up, that it can happen in a lot of different ways. So I was going to try to narrow in a little bit deeper. Like, is there something that people could be aware of or expect to know that maybe they are starting to
know
tap
when it's
in?
working?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there again, I mean, I always say it's an advantage to be able to have it confirmed, to have it confirmed that I'm receiving something useful in a reading setting. I get to see that, yeah, it's working because I'm saying the things that I'm picking up. So for, in your day-to-day life, that's where that leaping comes in, is to just trust. You have to decide that you're going to trust the things that you're receiving. If you feel like you're in a state, and an emotional state that is generally positive or at least neutral, you know that it's more likely to be receiving something divine. You're not going to be receiving divine messages if you are stuck in anger, stuck in resentment, stuck in the past, all of those thoughts that we kind of battle as we're working really hard.
Yeah. It
has to be a mode of not trying so hard. Learning to let go is sort of a really annoying phrase, but it is very helpful and important in a spiritual sense, that you're then open to let something new in. You can't be holding on tight to something for anything new to enter your experience or your awareness or your understanding. So that concept of letting go is a lot, what meditation is about. So there are some signs to know that it's working well physically. When your body feels relaxed, when you feel that sense of kind of being outside of your own being, you lose touch with physical sensations of the chair you're sitting in or the room that you're in. I like to talk about, again, I was kind of a weird little kid that just was absorbed in ways or I let myself go there, I guess. I remember being like, if you were having a sleepover with a friend as a little kid and it was all dark, but you keep having conversation in a dark room with your friend. And I would notice that suddenly the room and all the space around us had disappeared. Like we were surrounded by this just giant open space, and I could still hear them and I was still aware of them, but suddenly we just felt enormous to me. I don't know what was going on there at the time. I was a little kid, but I know now that is a sensation of, time and space has just kind of been set free. And now I'm in a new realm of understanding. And that's where new, really cool ideas come in. New ways of looking at things suddenly come to you. That's how you know it's working.
Wow. Okay. So it's all of a sudden you may have like, I guess, is it kind of in a place where you feel like epiphany moments, where you said these new ideas come to you? It's like an epiphany. And when, I think, I guess I'd never really connected the idea that, when we have those epiphany moments, because sometimes they happen to you randomly, you're doing something, but when you're in a meditative state, that is a direct connection to something greater, helping possibly. I guess I don't really know where I'm going with that. So,
yeah, well, I just thought of another really significant thing that I've noticed is it depends on then what you do with it. Spirit assistance is always there and kind of wants to be effective in your life. If you're going to receive a bunch of stuff and not do anything different outwardly, then look at it from spirit perspective. That kind of stops feeling like that much fun because you're not seeing any effects of the the new understanding, if you don't do anything with it in your physical life, then, you're not kind of moving the game forward in a way that builds momentum and encourages more and more of it. So, of course, again, to my example, in my life, once I started being willing to say out loud the things I was receiving for a client or, somebody in my life that I encountered, that picks up momentum and it is going to happen more and more. So if you show your willingness to join in and participate by taking the things that you receive as an epiphany or a message and doing something with it, you're going to see the effects build. Absolutely. So that's another important element. I think, what are you doing this meditating for? Just to feel good is enough reason, because it does feel good to kind of get into that mode of relaxation and letting go. But if you're doing it for your life to change, then take that leap and be willing to put something into action, even if it's some small change that came from one of those epiphanies, and then see what happens. And you'll get the same kind of validation that I'm talking about.
Beautiful. Yeah. While you were talking about that, I could see how in my own life, how, those epiphany moments would come and fear would be standing, it's right on the other side, because like what you're saying, taking these steps, being willing to take these leaps. Oftentimes you have to confront something that has been stopping you for a really long time. And having the reaffirming knowledge that you provide for people by connecting to a loved one who has passed on, or by the soul connection, I can see how that would help somebody look that fear right in the face and say, I'm going to conquer you today, and move through it. That's tremendously powerful.
Yeah.
So we're nearing the end of our interview, and before I ask you the last question, how do people connect with you? What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Well, they can find me and details about my work on my website, which is amandamodernmystic.com. And I am actually, as so many people always are, making some changes there and trying to update and be a little more clear about what the experience is like, and also to provide some details about group experiences that I offer. Doing workshops with group readings. They can be really powerful. That goes back to that collective energy that is at work when that symphony orchestra effect of having multiple people focused toward a goal together is really powerful and beautiful. So I'm adding information there about that. And then you can also email at readingswithamanda@yahoo.com, and that's where you would reach out to schedule a session. And again, sessions can be from anywhere in the world. I do my readings wherever you are and wherever I am, and we can do them in person if you're in Southern California.
Beautiful. Okay. And I'll leave links for those down below in the description, guys. So if you want to connect with her, be sure that you go down there, click on her website, shoot her an email, and connect. And Amanda, so I have two questions left for you. One of them is there anything during this interview that I should have asked you that I haven't?
Let's see. I think that we've been getting at it in our conversation, but something that I really would love to emphasize is that there really is more going on here than than we can see every day, and to just remind people of that on a daily basis, that the messages that I get from spirit to give others are perpetually uplifting. The messages are nearly always to build people up and to open your eyes to what you're capable of. We really are surrounded by a loving force of energy that wants to encourage us in that way every day. Every time I open up to spirit on behalf of somebody else, that is the message that's underlying what I get. And we get into some very specific details about people's lives and what's going on, but really the message is always based in, you've got this, and we're here to support it, and there is better for you, and there is better in your relationships, and yes, you are capable of experiencing life more, joyfully and immensely. So I think that's an important thing for me to convey whenever I can speak about what I do, is that is underlying every experience. That's why I love the work so much, because it gives me a chance always to have that reaffirmed and to hear it every time. So I love to be able to do that in a specific way, but then also say just generally, yes, you've got this. Yes, there is hope and love and support coming at you.
That's beautiful. Okay, so my last question. If you could go back to the version of you 10 years ago and give some sort of advice to that person, what advice would you pass on?
Oh gosh. Keep leaping, keep taking the leaps of faith. The other phrase that I really like is, there's nothing really going wrong here. I think that a lot of what we go through to get to sort of a more enlightened place feels really painful. It feels like struggle. It feels like a battle. And just, if I had learned the concept of letting go of that battle, letting go of the reins a little bit earlier, it might have accelerated my process somewhat. Of course, looking back, I can't change anything of the struggle, because in each struggle I have learned something very important and very significant that I think helps me and others. But that is the main thing that I try to convey to younger people all the time, is to just relax and be in the place that you are. Take it in. Don't try so hard to make changes sort of in a forceful way, because you can trust that good things are at work.
Beautiful. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your wisdom in such a grounded way that I feel like myself and the entire audience is going to be able to resonate with. And I know that we ran into some connection issues today in our video.
Thanks for the change of venue partway.
Yes, that definitely helped. But I look forward to seeing, where this goes for you. And I hope that in the future, you and I are able to connect again and maybe do another interview. But until then, guys,
I love it.
To connect, have a sense of reverence, be willing to jump, focus on meditation and taking care of your body, and there's nothing going wrong here. Wisdom from Amanda. Thank you so much, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.